Hey everybody, it's Party Elite here with another episode of Total Breakdown. This time we're going to see eumaies lead the Dwarfs in battle against the High Elves of Riggsen at the devastation of Ostermark. Just a quick reminder that if you enjoy Total Breakdown, make sure you drop a like and a comment. Not only does it help me know, but it also helps the channel out significantly thanks to how YouTube works. Now, let's get the show on the road. We begin, of course, with talk of composition and deployment and some pretty coy things going on the battlefield today. Let's start with the Dwarfs, though. We've got a Rune Lord in charge on foot, and the front line actually consists of these long beards with great weapons on either flank, and these dwarf warriors with great weapons in the center. Vanguard deployed, however, we've got these miners over here and over here, and then we've got these miners with blasting charges over here, here, and here. Then at the flanks, you can see we've got these dwarf warriors over here as well as over here. Then we've got these slayers, these dragonback slayers, I should say, over here tucked away in the trees. We've got these warriors of Dragonfire Pass blocking off the rear entry point, and then we've got, you can see, the Goblobber over here, some cannons over here. We have these Iron Drakes over here, as well as another unit over here. And then we've got a Runesmith tucked away in the trees as well. So a very interesting deployment going on. A bit of a box, I suppose, and some units being Vanguard deployed as well to maybe help shut down range capabilities and artillery. And on the topic of artillery, let's talk about the High Elves. We've got Teclis in charge on horseback, and he has brought with him these white lines of Schrace acting as a bit of a front line, and then 4 units of Eagle Claw bolt throwers. So that's a lot of artillery being brought in, and the rear now being closed off by these Sword Masters of Hoeth. A good call over there, anti-infantry and armor piercing, of course. And more or less right away you can see the artillery action does begin as we've got the Goblobber here tossing those gobs, I think trying to hit the, it looks like the white lines of Schrace, and the cannon is trying to hit over here the Eagle Claw bolt thrower, just trying to shut down some of the range capabilities of these Eagle Claw bolt throwers nice and early, and also do a little bit of damage to some of these infantry units as well. While at the same time, the Eagle Claw bolt throwers are firing back into, I believe, some of these cannons. So a little bit of artillery exchange going on as the Dwarfs begin to slowly make their way towards the enemy. Of course, they have an increased number of artillery units there, so the Dwarfs are forced to close the gap. And I think maybe the call for all of those Eagle Claw bolt throwers was to, in fact, reduce the number of, or the opportunity, I should say, to just box up around some artillery. So you can see some shots being traded back and forth. We've got some decent damage actually being done to these white lines of Schrace over here, to their morale, especially because the Goblobber, of course, does have that extra damage to morale. And you can see at the same time, these miners now are going to come in extra handy as they try to push in to shut down some of those artillery pieces. You can see the cannon as well doing a fair bit of work over here, focusing in on the Sword Masters of Hoeth, and that's not a bad call whatsoever, as the Sword Masters of Hoeth, again, are armor piercing and anti-infantry, so might as well just focus down on those guys and try to eliminate those units slowly but surely, and doing just that. And meanwhile, back here you can see a Flock of Doom coming down into this nice little clump over here, doing a touch of damage to a fair number of pretty threatening units, at least when melee begins. And you can see the Sword Masters here taking an absolute beating. Great call once again, just focusing in on this threatening unit, hoping to get it below that 50% health threshold to get rid of martial prowess, and also maybe get them to ideally leave the field by causing enough morale damage. But just take a look at that. In comes that constant beating. The Goblobber as well as the cannon doing a fair bit of work over here. Wonderful to see, focusing in on the right target. And you can see over here we actually have these miners still tucked away, still hidden, while the Eagle Claw bolt throwers continue to fire away, trying to take care of enemy range capabilities as well, dropping the cannon, dropping the Goblobber as well, doing a fair bit of damage. And you can see finally these miners have been spotted as these white lines of Schrace crept forward, and now these miners and these dwarf warriors over here have a huge distance to close before these miners actually get completely taken care of. And you can see we finally climbed up this little hill over here, able to close the gaps ever so slowly, but again hoping to just shut down some of the artillery pieces over here. And they are now firing in infantry mode, or anti-infantry mode I should say, focusing in on these clumps over here, hoping to get some damage before those lines actually close. And you can see these miners very confidently with their blasting charges, hoping to get some damage in to these white lines of Schrace, getting those blasting charges in there. And at the same time, we've got these miners as well throwing their blasting charges into these Sword Masters of Hoeth, who've already taken a fair bit of damage. So good call over there as these white lines of Schrace are trying to close the gap. And at the same time, back here you can see we've got the Rune of Wrath and Ruin focusing in on another unit of Sword Masters of Hoeth, hoping to drop them as they close the gap towards these dwarf individuals. Over here these miners are completely being shut down, so no chance for their survival. While you can see over here these guys are still creeping up, hoping to provide some support, but they will very quickly fall apart as they aren't really suited to defeat the Sword Masters of Hoeth. But in comes the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin, hoping to cause some damage and speed reduction there as well. While you can see over here we've got these miners able to push in and maybe get a rear charge. If they keep moving in unnoticed, they'll get a nice rear charge and shut down potentially both of these Eagle Claw bolt throwers, as they are rather closely packed. At the same time, they're still using their anti-infantry bolts here, just firing away at these massive clumps of dwarfs, hoping to just thin out the throngs, do a fair bit of hurt here, and it's working out quite nicely. The miners meanwhile are focusing in on the Sword Masters of Hoeth over here, doing a fair bit of damage, while the Runesmith as well as the Longbeards with great weapons are hoping to shut down these white lines of Schrace. The white lines of Schrace are not having a good time, of course, so that pseudo left flank over here is going to drop, especially as these dwarf warriors with their great weapons are moving in to intercept these sword masters of Hoeth, who are in turn pushing in to try and eliminate these miners. So a lot of little micromanagement going on here, managing that front line to ensure that the dwarfs succeed over here, because they sure as hell aren't succeeding over here, despite that volley of blasting charges coming in from these miners, doing a fair bit of hurt to these sword masters of Hoeth alongside the master rune of Wrath and Ruin from earlier. You can see meanwhile over here this Eagle Club bolt thrower as well, turning around, firing away at these dwarf warriors over here, hoping to get these guys to thin out as well, hoping to cause a fair bit of damage as these miners close the gap to these white lines of Trace, and you can see these miners confidently still pushing in as the goblobbers continue to fire away now, focusing in at the Eagle Club bolt thrower, I think hoping once more to just shut down that range capability. You can see back here at the same time a fair bit of damage has been done to the cannon as well as the goblobber. You can see as well the warriors of Dragonfire Pass have decided to stay back here just in case something was Vanguard deployed, just in case something might push through and try to shut down the artillery pieces in a more melee fashion, keeping the warriors of Dragonfire Pass back here. But unfortunately there is nothing back here, so that's a lot of wasted potential, a lot of wasted damage back there. Not that the dwarves can know, so there's nothing really they could have done about it, so it's a clever move nonetheless. Up front over here meanwhile you can see another use of Flock of Doom coming in as the Goblobber continues to fire away, hoping to shut down the Eagle Club bolt thrower, but you can see over here the miners are very close to closing the gap, while up front these white lines of Trace have been able to push through these miners, and now these dwarf warriors over here pushing in towards the Eagle Club bolt thrower as well, as these white lines of Trace push out to the side there, hoping to intercept at least something, while the Eagle Club bolt thrower crew actually abandons the equipment and pulls back into safety. You can see meanwhile up front over here, these dwarf warriors just not having a good time. That front line has completely collapsed. These guys are all falling back thanks to that great use of artillery from both atop the hill as well as back here, but now finally these miners are able to close the gap and eliminate some of those artillery pieces, or at least prevent their fire. So the Rune Lord now pushes here to provide some support alongside these dwarf warriors, as we have these sword masters of Hoeth coming in alongside these white lines of Trace. So a very threatening position over here to the left as an encirclement is happening, but now we've got these Iron Drakes pushing up and providing some serious support from range into these white lines of Trace, just firing away, causing a lot of damage. Take a look at those torpedoes coming in and just exploding these guys to bits. So finally we have these Iron Drakes moving in as well, hoping to provide some assistance, but in come the Eagle Club bolt thrower shots, while back here we have another use of Flock of Doom, again trying to eliminate this supporting flanking maneuver over here, while the Goblobber now firing away at the Sword Masters of Hoeth, trying to eliminate that unit, while you can see again these Iron Drakes now pulling back into safety, hoping to turn around and fire away at some of these massively clumped up individuals here, hoping to get a fair bit of damage. They have a decent bit of ground to cover, unfortunately, and they are quite slow, but in they come. They turn around firing away now, and at the same time you can see from atop this hill those shots from the Eagle Club bolt throwers just obliterating what's left of these dwarf units here, completely devastating their will to fight. And at the same time now you can see those torpedoes coming in, causing a fair bit of damage to the Sword Masters of Hoeth over here. Great call, turning around very quickly on their toes, very fast for dwarfs here, turning around, firing away the Sword Masters of Hoeth, again trying to eliminate that anti-infantry armor-piercing capability. Another volley here will shut them down, and you can see over here we've got these dwarf warriors trying to intercept, trying to hold these guys in place so that those Iron Drakes can fire away. Back here meanwhile you can see the warriors of Dragonfire Pass now moving in to eliminate these white lines of Trace, while over here as well the cannons now need to pull back into safety. Very quickly these Sword Masters of Hoeth are about to fall, while we have some of that range support coming in from the Iron Drakes over here as well, dropping these white lines of Trace, dropping their will to fight, dropping their health very quickly. Very nicely done, and you can see we have a nice route going on over here with the Sword Masters of Hoeth, and these Sword Masters now turning and trying to push in towards these Iron Drakes, but the Iron Drakes are able to turn around and prevent their approach. So in comes another volley, and just take a look at that as these guys just get blown to absolute bits. Great use of the Iron Drakes, great job, great presence of mind as well, just able to turn around and focus in on these Sword Masters of Hoeth, very close to getting them to rout, in fact, as well. If the Goblobber gets another shot in there as well, these Sword Masters have, well, they're guaranteed more or less to give up on the fight, but it might not even be necessary. Take a look at that as they turn, tail, and run, routing their way off. And meanwhile over here you can see we actually have Teclis getting involved in melee, using the Potion of Troy to stay alive and trying to scare off some of these units. These white lines of Trace as well doing a lot of work, hoping to shut down these Dwarf Warriors and the Dragonback Slayers over here alongside Teclis, but of course the Dragonback Slayers will do a number on Teclis if they're able to get some contact in there. Back here you can see the Runesmith as well, I think trying to creep up over here and shut down the Eagle Club bolt throwers, but we have over here these miners just kind of sitting there looking pretty. They need to move in, they need to help shut down the Eagle Club bolt throwers, because those Eagle Club bolt throwers are causing so much hurt, so much damage. It's not just about numbers, it's also about morale damage over here, but you can see up front these white lines of Trace are falling apart, while the cannons now are able to fire away at this massive clump as well, hoping to get some damage into these white lines of Trace and maybe scare them off instead. There's a beautiful clump over here, great call to focus in with the cannon over here, and you can see at the same time these Sword Masters of Hoeth still on the route over here, these guys as well routing away, while the Iron Drakes now free to push in and provide some assistance wherever they choose to. The Eagle Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower now turning around as well, once more focusing on the cannon, hoping to eliminate that artillery support, while finally these miners are made to move, pushing in towards the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. You can see over here the Swordmaster of Hoth do get hit by the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, hoping to slow them down, as the Runesmith is hoping to push in and take care of some of these Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers, while off to the side over here you can see we do have the Flock of Doom going down on these Dragonback Slayers. Again, they are an unbreakable unit, so might as well try and focus in and eliminate them as quickly as possible, while the Goblobber here firing away still at the Swordmasters of Hoth. And over here Teclis now moving forward, I think hoping to get involved with some charges, get some of these guys to rout and give up on the fight. Good call over there. They're very low on health, so a couple charges will do a lot of work. You can see morale is dropping quite significantly, but it is dangerous to stay stuck in there, of course, especially when there is some range support able to turn around and provide some support, of course, right away. You can see, I think these Iron Drakes hoping to fire away at some of these white lines of Shrace over here, while the cannon continues to fire away at this massive clump. So great call. Take a look at all of these routing units now. The tide of the battle has turned as all of these High Elf units decide to give up on the fight, but over here, the Runesmith actually gets intercepted by the Swordmasters of Hoth. So good job over there, pulling the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower crew back, keeping them safe, preventing the Runesmith from diving into them, but unfortunately we actually got these miners pushing in as well now, able to get a nice clean rear charge into the Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers, at least preventing that Bolt Thrower fire support. Over here the Longbeards were also hit by the Flock of Doom, getting them to rout, causing enough damage. Well, you can see more shots coming in from that Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower over here into this unit of Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, and again just getting them to give up on the fight almost. Very low on health, very low on morale, but you can see a massive rout going on back there, and the cannons now focusing in on the Swordmasters of Hoth over here as the Runesmith is trying to get away, trying to pull back into safety, taking a lot of damage. Again, armor piercing and anti-infantry on these Swordmasters of Hoth, so hoping that the cannons and maybe even those Goblobbers there will provide some assistance, getting some more shots in here. In comes the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, slowing these guys down, maybe allowing the Swordmasters to get away, while another Flock of Doom goes down over here, again causing some damage, trying to keep Teclis away from this dangerous situation as those Iron Drakes move in as well, hoping to get some shots into Teclis and scare him off. But you can see over here the Runesmith is not having a good time at all, so low on health and morale, despite using the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, not able to slow those Swordmasters down by enough. While back here you can see we have the Rune Lord pushing in alongside these Dwarf Warriors and these Iron Drakes as well, able to eliminate those Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower crew members more or less instantaneously now. Meanwhile, over here you can see the Iron Drakes still trying to close the gap over here, maybe hoping to get some shots into Teclis, scare him off. He is quite low on health. He's at about 50% now. His morale is pretty low as well. In come some shots from the Iron Drakes. Great call over there, hoping to just drop that morale, drop that health, scare him off, either literally or technically speaking, or just in the mind of the opponent, get Teclis to fall back. While over here you can see we have another Flock of Doom going down, again just hurting these Dwarf Warriors with their great weapons as they chase down the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower back there. Meanwhile, over here you can see the Runesmith in a bit of a trouble spot as he is fully surrounded by all of these Swordmasters of Hoth as well as these white lines of Shrace, so not having a good time at all. That Runesmith being driven off the field now, I think staying persistent in that chase, hoping to get rid of some of that runic support. While over here you can see the Iron Drakes continue to push forward, I think hoping to fire away at Teclis again, just hoping to eliminate that leadership from the High Elves. Teclis is not in a good spot at all. He needs to pop the Potion of Troy, stay safe from these Iron Drakes as they push in, again hoping to get some shots in, while off the distance still that Runesmith is in a bit of a trouble spot, but you can see a Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin coming in from the Rune Lord over here, who is in turn pushing in, chasing after some of these Swordmasters of Hoth as they sort of try to provide cover, I think, to the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. In comes a shot from the Goblobber as well, a beautiful shot there, a nice clump to be hit over here to be sure, while back here these Dwarf Warriors as well do get hit by the Flock of Doom, and then actually decide to pull back into safety from these Swordmasters of Hoth as the Goblobber support comes in, causing a fair bit of damage, hoping to stay alive for as long as possible, and then pushing in for a charge as the Iron Drakes fire away, thinning that front line ever so slightly, dropping some of these white lines of Shrace, doing a fair bit of damage. And now the Rune Lord as well is able to actually turn around and get involved if he so chooses, but I think instead diving into Teclis here, hoping to eliminate that leadership. No need, however, as the High Elves all begin to drop their flags and rout and shatter, giving the Dwarfs a Pyrrhic victory. Riggsen tried something very cheeky here, bringing 4 units of Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers, and though they didn't have kill counts in the hundreds, they did a lot to hurt Dwarf artillery and thin the throng on its approach. Despite that, some clever Dwarf deployment and persistence meant the Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers were eventually shut down, and the rest of the High Elf army was outdone. A grudge was settled today. As always, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Total War content and keep sending in those battle replays. I do think it's one of the best ways to learn, and it's always nice to see such interesting battles from the community. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the battlefield.